Today we have a special guest from Rare Ware Clothing, Maya Pin.
Hello Maya, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
How did your business start?
So my business is Rare Ware and it started almost 2 years ago now. And it was in the making sort of a bit before that, maybe 3 years ago. And it was brought about due to my son's disability. He is in a wheelchair, he wears AFOs, which are ankle foot orthotics, which are sort of from your go up your ankle almost to your knee, and pants wouldn't fit over his AFOs. So that was our first product, was pants with just zips down the side. And then we have now moved into swimwear, jumpers and singlet onesies. So we do sizes 2 to 14 and we're just expanding every day.
How did you come up with the clothing for Lloyd?
That's a great question. It was such a complex process trying to design clothing when my background is in science, which kind of has to do with clothing, I guess, but not really. So I just tried to piece bits together of what was hard with Lloyd. So his AFOs, zips, and he has a peg feeding tube in his tummy, so that's quite hard to access. So I thought, oh, put a zip there, I think that'll work. Sometimes I sewed some things in and realised it definitely didn't work. And I asked opinions of a lot of different parents and people. So tried to get a lot of people involved and make sure our designs were good and they were going to function for not just Lloyd, but other kids as well.
Is Lloyd's condition called SWAN, or are you part of a group?
Great question, and it is very confusing. Lloyd's condition is a rare genetic condition, so there's one of about 300 in the world for his condition. It's classed as a syndrome without a name because it sounds really funky. It's IQ-SEC2 associated neurodevelopmental disorder. It's a mouthful, but basically we call it IQ-SEC2 for short because no one wants to say the whole thing. But I also work for a not-for-profit that's called SWAN Australia, so Syndromes Without a Name Australia, and we help families with children with undiagnosed and rare genetic conditions, so like Lloyd. We do events and give them information and just try and help as best we can, and that's national. So kind of a 2-in-1. He is a SWAN, but I also work for SWAN.
What made you to be the organisation for SWAN, and how did you communicate and connect with other family members what you're going through?
SWAN was founded 13 years ago and I became friends with the founder and she was the CEO at the time. That was a place where I finally connected with other families. Like Lloyd's condition is about 18 in Australia, which is really rare. And so it was nice to meet other families going through similar things, especially when he was undiagnosed for 2.5 years. That was really a scary and isolating time. And then I happened to there was a job opening at SWAN and Heather, the founder, asked if I wanted to work part-time, and I thought that would be great because I already knew so many families. Yeah, that's how I sort of got into the organisation, and now my business and the organisation kind of go hand in hand, but it's nice to connect with people.
Did it take long to make the clothing?
It's kind of a long process. I don't personally make all the clothing. I do the samples, so where I make a trial piece where I test it out, but I actually get them made overseas. I have to talk to my guy overseas who's really nice and place an order, go through some details with him, and it takes probably 3 months to get here. Sometimes it's a little bit longer if there's holidays, and it depends if it's a new product. So we're about to get some new pants in, and they're really cool. Well, I think they're cool. They have a lot more detail, so they're gonna take a little bit longer.
How do you adapt your products to all different disabilities?
So it's actually been more challenging than I had anticipated. I always talk about Lloyd being a sort of all-in-one because he's got a feeding tube, he's incontinence aids, he's in a wheelchair, but he also is learning how to walk, and he has a severe intellectual disability, so mobility and things are a bit hard. But there's definitely other aspects I haven't thought about. So I talk to Lloyd's school friends' parents, or I talk to friends and family, and I try and talk to people on social media and ask what they need. And I also go to different expos or trade shows, and I always ask for families, if you have any suggestions, I'm so happy to take it on board. And so they email me or they tell me and I quickly write it down, but I just try and get as much advice and feedback as possible to try and suit different kids, because all abilities are so different and everyone's body shapes are so different, and same with colours and patterns. So they've got to be fun though.
How do you make swimwear accessible?
Making it accessible is kind of hard. There's lots of zips and lots of measuring, but our swimwear, the material is good to go in water. It's a mixture of stretchy material and not quite waterproof material, but it doesn't wear too much in the water. It gets tight, but not too tight, because sometimes swimwear can get really tight and it's really hard to get off. So I made this a little bit less tight, and it's got zips from up here down to your wrist on both sides. And it's a one piece. So Lloydie, my son, he is in continence aids. So there's a zip down the bottom, which is really easy to get it on and off, or even to go to the toilet, super easy. And then I've got zips down the sides for his feeding tube. And I've got one down the middle so you can just undo it a little bit if it's a really hot day, or if you just want to take it off that way. They're accessible with all the different zips and pieces to it.
Yeah, of course.
Were there any obstacles when creating your adaptive clothing business?
Yes, lots and lots of obstacles. I would say my biggest obstacle was money. Starting a business costs a lot of money, buying clothing costs a lot of money, but the other obstacle was time. So it takes a lot of time to do designing of products, and then I've got to test them. And of course my son, who's got a disability, doesn't fit all the different adaptive features that we have. So I try and make it pretty universal if I can, but I'm also a little bit picky on what colors I want. And I guess all those like not very important parts, but they're important to me. I'm doing uni at the same time. So I guess more that time factor again of like trying to fit everything in, but also making sure I try not to make mistakes, but there's been plenty made, but you learn from them. So as long as you learn from them, I think that's good. So I don't have specific wheelchair user clothing. The pants that we do have a little bit extra length, so that when my son, he's in a wheelchair, when he sits in his wheelchair, they're not right down in his bum, like you don't want to see that. And so that they're not coming up too high, kind of like how my pants are currently. But I have designed the clothing with wheelchair users in mind, and I have future clothing coming out that is specific to wheelchair users, particularly teenagers and younger adults, because you can't wear trackies all year round. Unless, well, maybe you can. I have that in mind when I create all my different designs, including onesies and stuff like that, so a little bit longer.
Do you have parents who come up to you with similar experiences whose children are or were born premature?
Yes, I have actually had quite a few parents come up, talk about adaptive clothing for their children that were born premature, and more so kids with cerebral palsy because of being born premature. And a lot of my clothing is meant for children or teenagers, adults with CP, because my son has very similar features, although his is a genetic condition. So a lot of those features are in mind, and a lot of parents resonate with that, and they love the fact that it's made for their kids.
Where can we buy your clothes?
Great question. There is 4 different ways. First is my website. Second is through Tubifun, which is another company that makes products for kids with feeding tubes. The other one is through Instacare. They're a plan manager and they have their own shop, and you can actually see the products in person or purchase them online. And we're about to be in a shop in Rosebud, in a physical shop on some shelves. So that'll be really cool.
We learned quite a lot towards clothing that caters towards children with disabilities. Follow for more information on Rare-Ware.